So mass, basically, when you create a form in Revit, it'll allow you to take the mass and you can put information within that mass, and it keeps a live link, okay, between the mass and whatever object you associate to that mass. Format's a bit different. You've got to model stuff manually and keep a live link going. So as you're modeling in Revit, and you have to keep refreshing the link. So you can go that route. If you go that route, it's also going to have limitations. Your documentation process is not going to be as intuitive. Okay. So in this model, this is my example. The mass is not visible at the moment. By default, masses are not visible because they're actually used to drive form. Okay, so basically you can see I modeled a very basic mass. And if we go to, I'm going to just turn on a section box. What I also did very quickly, and this was in last week's video, I also created a very quick basement that cuts into the topography. So I've just started considering where my basement would go, but at any stage, I can start changing what's going on. So last week, we worked on how to set up your levels. If you guys started to look at setting up your levels, basically, when we did that setup. Okay, so in this building project, you'll notice that I've got my levels set up already, and if I go to my section, you'll notice that I've got these levels in my model the whole time. So I'm going to get rid of this mass for the time being. I'm deleting the mass. Okay. And remember, the site model is linked in. So whatever work happens on the site, I do in the site model drawing. I open that drawing and I created my basement there, and all my site stuff happens in that drawing, not here. Okay. This is a building model. Good. Now, let's just go back to my site plan very quickly. So my site plan, I'm going to use this information that I got, that link that I got in from the civil drawing. I'm going to go to VG very quickly, and I'm going to switch off that link from, so I'm going to hide the site model for the time being. So this Revit model, I'm just going to hide. Good. Because all I'm after at the moment is I just want the extent to my building, and I'm going to create a basic mass. Okay. So what happens is if you go to the massing tab and you go to model in place, you can give it a name. I'm just going to call it mass 1 for now. Okay, great. Now by default, masses don't show because they dry form. So I'm going to create something very organic in this space, and I'm going to show you how to model something very organic. Okay, so we'll start with something organic to show you that there is this possibility. Good. Now, unlike working in format where you've got a UCS, that's your axis. So X, Y, Z. So here's a plane, X, Y. So you've got Y, Z planes sometimes. So if you want to model stuff in format, sometimes you've got to work on planes. Now in Revit, each level now becomes a working plane in essence. And each grid that you make also becomes a working plane. Okay. So, but we'll set up grids now. So basically just understand, if I go to 3D, that these levels are work planes in essence. So let me go to site plan. Now I'm going to start in massing. I'm going to create, so what's interesting is you create a series of shapes and you stitch them together. So I'm going to use something quite organic. I'm going to use the spline. And if I had to go and create something I'm going to use the space over here. Okay, now what's interesting about a spline is they don't like to close. Sometimes you've got to use a straight line between the two, which is a bit strange. Okay. But let's see, snap in. Sometimes it'll allow me to close. No, it won't. Good. Sorry. I'll get rid of this point here quickly. Select this point over here. This is the strangest thing about a spline. I wish it was something that they would address, but anyway. So let's grab this point over here. I'll put an arc between these two. So I'll put an arc. Okay, so this point, and when you put the 2 points down, you'll notice it doesn't give you a lot of flexibility in terms of changing the shape. Okay, so maybe let me just pull this back this way. This end point, so let me see, I can move it. If you use tab, good. I'm going to do something like that. Well, let's get some of these points away. And remember, at any point, you can remove some of these. Okay, so you can control how many control points you have. These are control points. I'll leave it like that for now. Let's do something like that. Good. Now, all that I need to do is this needs to be closed by an arc. So now I can go to that point there, that point there. It's the strangest thing. Okay, but it will recognize as a closed loop. Now, by default, you'll notice it will work. This always works on hosts or planes. And you see this was level 0. By default, site is level 0. But now I've got floor 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to look at working in those different levels now. Anyway, now you've got two options. When you've modeled a bit of line work, you'll notice that it's always used model line work. Okay? But I would want to change these to a reference line. I'm going to click this icon over here. I'm going to make this a reference line. I'll explain why. A reference line also becomes like a work plane. And we just tab. Now, because the spline was linked to an arc, you have to tab until you select just the spline to make some adjustments. I'm just making some adjustments. Good. Now, I'm going to grab all of this connected line work. I'm going to go to the copy command. So I'm going to go to copy. You'll see here, copy to clipboard. I'm going to go to paste. I'm going to say align. I'm going to paste this to as a certain level. So I'm going to paste this to level 1 now. Now, if I go to 3D view, you'll notice that it's pasted that information. Ah, that one isn't a spline, so I need to fix that. Go back to site. That is a reference line. Strange. It should be visible. Very strange. Okay, that should be visible in the view. Anyway, VG imported categories. Let's get rid of the link for now so we can see what you're doing. What's cool is if I keep going paste and I say align to selected levels, and guess what? 2 to 4 down, you'll notice it's moved that stuff. It's pasted it on all those levels. Let me just grab this guy as well, because this one should be doing it as well. Tab. This guy should also be doing it. So I'm going to copy that, but it's also level 3. That's strange. On this plan view, it's saying it's closed. Anyway, let's go to 3D view. Now, on each one of these levels, you can go and make slight adjustments. This is just very quick. And remember, those are always linked to a level. Okay, they're always linked to one of these levels. Okay, I'm cutting through this as a section at the moment, so that's probably why we can't see it. That explains a lot. Good. Now, I can grab this one. I can make some slight adjustments to this one. I know I'm cutting into the neighboring building, but I'm just trying to demonstrate the power of using these types of forms. When I select all of these forms, and I use this command over here, you would have noticed it created a very organic type form following that shape. Quick. Okay, I'm just going to switch off the section box. I'm going to switch off the section box for the time being. Okay, there we go. So I managed to create a very organic object just by using some simple shapes. Okay. Now, what's very cool is I'm just going to give this a different material so it's a bit more visible. But by default, it gives it like a glass material. Okay. Now, what's fascinating, if I go to architecture and I go to walls, so I can actually use any wall type. And if I go to, let's create an architectural wall, but I want face, guess what? If I select this object, it'll create a wall to follow that object. Quick. All right, undo. I can also make this if I go to architecture, I can use a curtain panel system very quickly. Create system. Okay, the reason why it looks so bad, I'll explain now. So let's grab the system. Let me show you this. All that we have to do with the system, we have to add complexity, 20, and you'll notice this will start updating, give it a couple seconds. So basically, it's created a curtain wall system to follow that system as accurately as possible. Okay, but I can take it further. I can go and edit the system even more, and I can build in some structure. And what's neat is each panel of glass, I can remove and replace with something else instantly. Okay, so let me just grab the system again. I'll show you now. I'll build floors very quickly. Okay, let me just grab the system. Give me 2 seconds. Come. There we go. Now, what I can do is I can add complexity now. So I can start adding in some mullions. So these systems are driven by a structural system of mullions. Okay, glass needs a structure. Control C, Control V. Glass is control taste, Control V. Good. Come on. Control V. Oh, no wonder it's not copying the whole name. My bad. Control C doesn't recognize the name. Control V. Control V. Control V. But that video about Balkan architects will help you quickly to drive form, and I'll show you another workflow very quickly. Press OK. This will take a bit of time again, so give it a couple more seconds. Notice now it's built a whole structure. Okay, so you'll see it's built the whole structure very quickly. Okay, cool. Now, what's interesting is if I tab and I select the mass, I can say, well, actually, put the floors in for all levels. So what it will automatically do, it will generate and calculate all the floors. But this didn't happen because my mass wasn't closed. So I need to fix something very quickly. So let's just get rid of this, the structural system, get rid of that for now. Let's go back in here and say edit in place. Edit in place. Okay, now, what should have happened is these objects, so let me just delete the whole mass itself, so tab and, so why did I use reference lines and not model lines? What reference lines allow me to do, let me just explain this quickly. If I just tab and I'll select this, if I change this, guess what's happening to the form? So as I'm changing the reference lines, I can control the form very quickly. Okay, so that's very neat. But let me just get rid of the tab. I want to get rid of the form itself. Get rid of that. Good. Now it should make a closed form. So let me just try this again and select all of those as well. Now it's a closed form. Finish. And you see what it's done? Now watch this. Architecture. I want to put my floors in very quickly. Floor by face, but guess what? Floor by face. Now make sure what slab. Watch this. Dun, dun, dun. So now I'm selecting what floors need to be. Create floor. Voila. That's made my floors very quickly. Boom. Now what's cool is if I go back to my mass, I go to side plan quickly, but now I need to cut this building up inside. I need to cut cores in it. I need to make holes. Good. I'm going to make a rectangle. I'm going to make sure that I'm working on level 0. I'm going to cut a quick core into this building. I've created this form and I'll explain. I'm going to leave this as model lines. So I can just I'll do something like that, for example. Grab just this object, go to 3D view. This is when you start working in 3D view. That should have been, why not? That should be on level 0. Okay, so that should be on level 0. Now I'm going to say create form. I'm going to pull this up. I can take any shape and make it a form. So I'm going to grab the bottom face very quickly. Guys, this is a bit strange. I'll explain. Now if I grab this form, I'm going to tell this form, you must actually go from a solid to a void. Okay, so now, and if I finish this model very quickly, guess what's happened to the floors? You'll notice the floor slabs will have all the holes in them already. Okay. But if I go to massing and site and I switch off, wait a minute, these must just be updated. So select these guys. If you say update, watch, update. Updates. 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 Voila. Guys, quickity quick. Okay, but here's the caveat. When you start, this gets quite complex because this is all pure maths now. So if it doesn't make sense mathematically, you have to model it manually. Okay, but you can see, you guys can see that you can create some really cool organic shapes rapidly. Okay. Cool. Okay, bring back. But now this is why the mass is always not, it's not visible because it actually drives forward. Okay, so let me just add, what I would do sometimes is I'll split these faces up into, so you need to determine what face is going to be glass and what's not going to be glass. Okay, but what's neat is if I grab this form if I can, let me just go back and edit the mass quickly. Let me explain something as well. If I go to edit in place, these objects that we create, I can go and edit its profile now. So I can actually go and change this top profile, for example, and I explain that this will look different to the bottom. So if I do that, for example, and I say finish, you'll notice it'll cut away a portion of the facade. Okay, so it's like you're working with clay. You have models that are form and you have models that take away from form. Okay, so that's where this Balkan Architect video will help you guys. He goes, I think he even shows you how Zaha Hadid's, get that building's name. He actually models it using masses. Okay, but this video shows you how to model. I'll do one more demonstration, okay? One more. Okay, now inside of this mass, say now I want to create some features that run along the facade that are very organic as well. Okay, I'm going to introduce some grids. I'm going to show you how grids become working planes as well. Okay, so let's go to site. Finish mass in place. Okay, now I'm going to create a series of grids very quickly. I'll make two. I'm going to explain because grids are actually working planes as well. So I'm going to create a grid there and a grid there, for example. Good. Now you see I've got grid 1 and 2. If I go to 3D view, now those grids won't be visible, but if I go and edit this mass in place, and they're over here somewhere, edit in place, and I go and say set, and I go and say, you'll see that my grid lines start showing. And if I go to show, you'll notice now that I've got a work plane. That's a grid. Now I'm going to go and create another spline, and I'm going to use this facade over here. So what it'll do is allow me to snap. So what it will do is it'll work on this plane. So you see that I've created the shape that runs up here next to the building, but it's using my grid now as a work plane. So levels and grids become work planes now. It's quite clever. You can use reference lines to become grids as well. And I'll explain that. Now that this is the model line, I can literally click the form button and you'll see that it'll make an extrusion for me very quickly. So it'll do this for you. But that's not what I'm after. I want to do something a bit more. Just delete. If you delete this form, it deletes that. So just be careful. That's why you're going to use a combination of model lines and reference lines. So I'm going to make this a reference line. Good. Now that you see I've got a reference line, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a point. Now I'm going to grab a point, and when you select, if you grab a point and you select on that reference line now, guess what? It's going to form a relationship with that line. So each one of these points now is working with that spline. So now we're creating little work planes along that spline. And what's fascinating, when they to the spline, if I type in 0.2, you'll notice that the spline will move down to the beginning, 0.2. So you can create these things and you can give them a ratio along that spline. So let's take that one back to 0.8, so 0.9 maybe. We'll go right to the end of the spline. Make this one 0.5, so we know it's in the middle, exactly in the middle. You can use distance as well. And I'll make this one, this guy, I'm going to make 0.1. It's maths. So you can say if you make it 1/10, 1 divided by 10, you type in. But what's neat about Revit is equals to 1 divided by 10. Done. So you can do maths in these. Okay. You can do complex equations as well, by the way. Okay. Cool. So what this does is I'm going to use reference lines again, and I'm going to use a series. I'm going to use this tool for the time being. Now, you can go and set the work plane by saying pick here, pick reference point. It doesn't matter what point you pick. Sorry, pick. If I go to this point over here, click, voila. This is the only thing that you need to get your head around when doing masses or type of modeling in Revit. It needs a form and it needs reference planes the whole time. Revit is very constrained. It needs a plane to work off. You can use other objects' faces as planes, reference lines, but it's critical to understand that Revit needs relationships with other objects. You can't just model stuff free because it's using maths the whole time. It needs something to create an equation from something. Okay, I'm going to pick this bottom point over here. I'm going to create a quick, and I can change this at any point. And while you're modeling, you can also tell it, okay, you can model on face. So I can actually model on these faces. You'll see that it'll try and pick the face. Or if I pick work plane, it'll try and pick a plane. But here, I'm just going to use a pick function so I know the whole time. Pick this guy over here, start the center. I'm just going to create something very strange. And I'll do this again. Pick. Good. Now, at any point, I can go and change these shapes, but what's neat is select those objects. So use control, so hold control down. And then you select path as well. So what this will do, it'll create a form very quickly. And because these things are live, as you change them, and when you select that point, you can use your maths. So make this 1, it'll go right to the end. So you can actually make a form, and you can use, it's called Dynamo, and you can do procedural modeling. So as the sun moves, these shapes can also dynamically change. Okay, it's very powerful, but it does come with some caveats. Okay, now let's finish this mass. So what's cool is, on the one side of the mass, for example, I want glass, and you see it's put the floors in for me already. Now, on the one side, I want glazing. On the other side, I want a brick wall. Architecture, wall by face. There's my brick wall. Architecture, wall. Okay, now I want a different system. So in architecture, I want a glazing system. I want it on that face over here. Create system. I'm going to put my floor slabs in very quickly. Okay. So this is, you can see, guys, this is seriously powerful. Okay.